All right, it's jpeg2RAW, show number 89, recorded on August 27th, 2013. And for a record fifth time, we have Rachel Brenke coming back on the show. Rachel, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome to talk to you every time we have you come on, and showing by the fact that we have you on for the fifth time, we can just not get enough Rachel. And
I appreciate
you
it.
would think, often say that we never finish an interview with a photographer that gives a chance to have him back on. But you're always doing so many things, so many new things. If you watch Rachel's Facebook page or watch her websites or Twitter or whatever, is so active. I've termed you the Superwoman, that no matter how many times we have you on, we'll never get finished. Uh,
Always got to be doing something. Always
yes.
got to stay fresh.
So that's good for us. We can, hopefully you keep enjoying to come back, and we'll keep having you back as often as you want to come. Before we get to you, there's a couple of things, because the shows have been a little sporadic because of some what I'm dealing with up here, but we're getting back on track. But a couple of things I didn't get to cover in the last two shows that I'm going to go over right now real quick is our monthly photo contest. We have a monthly photo contest in the jpeg2RAW Facebook group, and I just realized I think we're on our 1 year. August is our 1 year anniversary of doing it. So we've got it every month for the last 1 year. And then we do a special one. We've only done this for 1 year, so this will be the second time. A special contest at the end of the year for your best photo of the whole year. Normally it's your best photo of that month based on that challenge for the month. So I want to quickly go through some of the photos that we've had in the last June and July. August is still open, and I won't spend a ton of time on them. But one of the first ones here is by Dan Crosby, and the topic for June was intense, and we let the photographer choose how they interpret intense. So however you want to interpret intense. So you can see three different things here, and then the people in the Facebook group like the photos, and the three with the top likes, the three photos with the most likes, enter a finalist stage, and then the admins of the group pick the winner. So Dan Crosby submitted this one. Then we had Paula Frankhauser, hopefully I said her name right, enter this one with the moon. I think that might have been the supermoon. We had the supermoon. And then lastly, we had Jeff Wycliffe. You know how bad I am with names. Submit this one. Jeff is one of the many talented photographers we have in our Facebook group. And this one won for June. He's done some of the sparklers there. He's got the dark frame around him. Just an amazing shot. So he won for June, and the winner gets like a $25 gift certificate to Amazon. Plus they get to pick the next topic, and they get their photo up on the top of the page. For July, the topic was water. And this one, Brian how would you pronounce that? Can you see that?
That's beautiful.
Brian Casado? I know I'm saying your name wrong.
Pasito?
Casito, there you go. Brian Casito.
Maybe.
Brian, if I said your name wrong, so I'm sorry. And for July, we also had a special thing. If an admin, one of the admins, is in the final three, we let the fourth person come in also, and the admin is banned from voting for that month. So in this, for July, Gina Perry, who's one of the admins, had one of her photos come in as one of the finalists. So there'll be four for July, and she didn't get the vote to make all this fair. But we don't want the admins to be banned from being able to participate. So hers was, it shows the summer fun of with water, and who hasn't done that as a kid in a pool, or have kids who've done that. So just the fun of the summer with water. And then Richard Paris. All right, help me out with that one, Rachel.
Paris? I don't know. I don't know. I
Paris.
love that photo though.
Richard Paris. Yeah. Yeah, all of these are great. I love Brian's. I love Gina's. Richard's was awesome. You can any of these were great. I love his. The final one, the one that won, was by John Gross, and for the topic of water for July. And I love that one too. It's the one with the least amount of water in it, but for whatever reason, we like that one the best. Is best the use of water in that image. So those are the ones for June and July. The August contest, of course, is still going on. Um, the topic for August, you have until August 31st. The topic for August is fire. So, and I know at first we got a little bit of heat to play on that word about, hey, people are going to go damage themselves, with fire. But again, fire can be however you interpret it. It doesn't have to be actual fire. You could have made a case for Richard's photo there of the sky, or that red sky being the fiery sky. So, however you interpret it.
I have an opportunity for fire every night that I cook. I just need to have my camera.
So there you go. Or it could be candles on a cake. And if you don't, the thing is, if you don't like that month's topic, just wait till the next month. There'll be another topic. So, but you can only join. You can only join a contest. You can only vote on a contest if you're in the Facebook group, which is Facebook/groups/jpeg2RAW. It's real easy. All right, that's out of the way. Let's get right to Rachel. Before we get to Rachel, and I'm going to say this in my non-lawyer terms, and then Rachel can correct me. Rachel's going to give us some legal. I hate to use the word advice, but give us her legal thoughts on the various questions we're going to go over. Mm-hmm. Regardless of how much you think your situation may be exactly like what we talk about, those minute details of your situation, including where you live, including other small facts I won't even be able to say, that Rachel will be able to address more. Those small facts can have a dramatic difference in the opinion. So if this is more of an idea, if you want specific advice on a specific situation, it's best to contact Rachel directly, or some other lawyer, somebody who's like Rachel, who knows what they're talking about, not like me, and get direct advice on that. So with that, if something goes wrong and you get dragged into court, don't say, well, Mike told me on JPEG2RAW. Yeah, that's not going to help you at all, because
They're going to go, who?
Mike's not a lawyer. Rachel didn't tell me to say that, but I'm sure she has something similar to say, maybe more professional.
Just basically any of the questions, you guys are welcome to ask questions tonight if there's a situation that may come up, and I'll try to get to it, but if I answer, it's very general. It may not be the actual answer, but it might give a good educational background to be a good research starting point for you to have.
That's good. All right, so I did have some questions. So like Rachel said, ask questions during the show, and I will try and watch the chat and interject them as we go. And then if I don't get yours, because the chat's going to go by a little quick here. If I don't get yours, you might have to repeat them more. And then toward the end, I'll open it up again to where I cover more of your questions. Or if you want me to expand on a question. But, try and get your questions in. If you don't get it right at first, just ask again. So, first thing, Rachel was lecturing me a little bit on using streaming live music last week and why I got banned from YouTube. Well, I learned my lesson, Rachel. No more streaming live music, so no music tonight. But it got me thinking. I was looking at some other popular photographer photo podcast blogs, and they use images on their site that, let's say, for instance, maybe they use. You remember the big ads of PC versus Mac, and you had the Mac guy and you had the PC guy, and the PC guy was maybe a little bit heavier like me, and the Mac guy was the more slim, good-looking guy. Remember those ads? Mm-hmm. They're using photos like that with no graphic or anything on that. Do you what is my restrictions on what kind of photos can I use in a blog post on my site?
Well, it kind of depends. Who created it? Do they purchase it from a stock site who took that concept and maybe this blog has then purchased a license from that site, or did they create them themselves? And it also depends on what the blog themselves are. A photography blog, someone that's specifically photography, you could put stock photos, but that's kind of teetering on the edge of, do you really want to put that out there that that's your photo when it's not? Mm-hmm. But then you kind of have some websites that are in the same realm as mine of business that I know a lot of them do use those, and that's kind of the situation that I'm talking about here. They'll use stock photos or have a designer that creates it, and they purchase a license for use on it. It kind of goes the same thing with music, like we were talking about earlier. Anytime you're going to put any other graphics or pictures or music, any other creative works that are not your own, you need to either have permission. Well, you have to have permission, but whether or not that permission you had to pay for or not, it kind of gets all muddled.
So what some, in this case, it was the actual photo of the PC and the Mac guy. So what this person probably did, we're hoping, is bought it from a stock agency where they now have the license to use it.
Hoping, yeah, I would. I mean, but see, that's the thing, though, is it just like many photographers surprise me on a daily basis about that they may not necessarily know something about copyright. Something that I find simple, of course, because I got to remind myself that I have the education and experience of it, that some of these bloggers may not have that knowledge and experience. They're still trying to find their way to, not justifying that they have it on there if they don't have permission, but, you know, that is, it's a very real possibility that they're uneducated and don't know that. Just like our clients may not know that they can't screenshot their images of that we take at their session.
Okay. And before I forget, let's flip over to, you have a book on Amazon.
I do.
And I got that pulled up now. What does it take to get a book on Amazon? That is awesome.
Amazon was actually the easiest one to get on. It was harder to get on to Barnes & Noble, the iBooks store, the Apple Store, Nook. Actually, Kindle and Amazon were the easiest. They're very open to having a lot of resource available because they want to be the biggest. So that was, my publisher took care of that for me, and I just had to request to get on Barnes & Noble's. Theirs is the Nook? Yeah, the Nook version. Yeah, I had to actually have my audience and readers go on to barnesandnoble.com to request to get it on there, because even if myself as the author and the publisher requested it, they wanted to see that it was in demand. But Amazon, they're all for it. They actually had it up and ready to go prior to it even being printed. Before I even had my author copies, they were already taking pre-orders.
So, this goes back to why I call you Superwoman, because you got 3 kids now, 4th on the way. Your husband, up until recently, has been in the military where he had to travel. And you run a photography business in the law side, and yet you have find time to write a book.
The book kind of was a happy accident. It was on a very quick turnaround. In December, the publisher contacted me, and I knew I had WPPI, the move, and everything coming up, and we didn't know we were pregnant yet. And I'd been writing the book in my mind and on the computer for over a long amount of time, but the publisher called me in December and goes, okay, we want you to write this book. And then I told them about WPPI, which was first week of March. And in order for it to be out by March, they wanted me to have it to them by end of January. So essentially I had 30 days to get it through all the editing process, all the creation, and pushed out. And it was put out on shelves February 13th.
Yeah, and that, I forgot all about WPPI, and somewhere in all this, you also went on Creative Live.
I did.
Yes. So if you can quickly tell me about WPPI and then about Creative Live and how that came about, because it's just amazing you're doing all these things.
WPPI, I co-spoke with Robin Long. We hosted a class. We did a master class, and we talked about marketing. And that was phenomenal. It was really good to have that experience, and I had a lot of support from people that I've met online and that I hadn't met. A lot of my students, people that I've just talked to online in the photography industry that actually came to WPPI to support me, and I got to meet them in person there. And also, with like 30 days prior to WPPI, Creative Live decided to do this spotlight, which was essentially I think they took 6 spots that you did on-air auditions, and you're auditioning to get a teaching spot. And they had a panelist of judges, Sue Bryce being one of them, and George Brenke and a couple others from the Creative Live staff, which was very nerve-wracking, but it was great. I got to meet Jasmine Starr and a whole bunch of other hosted people that have been teachers on Creative Live. It was a very overwhelming but really great experience. And so the judges picked who they liked the best, and so a pet photographer, Arca, she's already done her class now. She went to Seattle this summer and did it, but they also did a fan contest, or the fan favorite, and that's what I won. So I was then offered a Creative Live teaching position to come out to Seattle and do my own 2 or 3 day workshop, and it should have been this summer, but with the move and the pregnancy, I just asked them if I could hold off until next year, get through the holidays, and they have been amazing and accommodating, and so that'll be coming in March-ish. I can't give that exact date yet because it's not finalized, but I think it's going to be March, April.
So I thought you were already on Creative Live.
Well, I did the audition,
okay.
And so I did a 30-minute class, which was my audition.
Oh, okay, because I did see your audition tape, which was like a few minutes long. I saw that.
So while I was in Vegas for WPPI is when I did the actual 30 minutes in front of the judges.
Okay. Yeah, 30 minutes in front of the judges. That had to be nerve-wracking. So
yeah,
you were in person with them?
I'm sorry, say that
You were
again?
in person doing the audition?
Oh, yeah, in person.
Wow.
I mean, I had Sue and George like 10 feet from me, and I was freshly pregnant, so I was really, really sick, and I didn't know if I was going to throw up from being pregnant or because Sue Bryce was sitting there listening to me talk, or if it was just a combination of everything. And
well, congratulations. That is a nerve-wracking but great accomplishment, and we look forward to seeing you when you go on there.
Thank you. I'm nervous just thinking about it, but really the encouragement of a lot of the audience has really pushed me to push past the fear. Since I'm always encouraging you guys listening to do it, I kind of got to eat my own words and do it myself.
Well, the hard part's over. You did the audition. Now you're in.
Yeah, I'm in.
All right, so getting back to some of my questions, and you guys out in chat, if I missed some of your questions, bring them back up. So let's kind of go back to the beginning. How important is it for a photographer to have a contract that they get signed before a shoot? Yeah, I hear, in my group, not so much, but in some other groups I'm in, it's a lot of times photographers have a problem with a client, and the first question everybody asked them was, did you have them sign a contract?
Yeah, and I actually want to preface that. While a contract, generally, you have to have a contract. There's written contracts. There's some exceptions because you can have oral agreements, but depends on situation. But I do want to remind people listening, just even if you do make the mistake of not having a physically written contract, you can still look at agreements made through written or oral communications, generally. But a contract itself is so important, and a lot of people think that I say that, because I'm an attorney. No, I actually found that it really helps to set not only just all the legal expectations, the responsibilities, who's going to do what, it sets the expectations of what we expect from each other and the policies. Because there's nothing more frustrating than at the end of for example, we went out to eat the other night, and when we got our bill, there was these unexpected charges on it, and which wasn't a big deal, but it kind of left, pardon the pun, a bad taste in my mouth from the restaurant because I hadn't been informed of that ahead of time as the customer. I felt like that was their duty. So I feel like contracts not only safeguard the legal aspects and educate the client, but they outline all those expectations and responsibilities to let the client know that this is a two-way street as well.
And like a lot of contracts, if I go online, I see all these words, I just scroll to the bottom and hit accept and move on. Should there be, like, when you're getting a client to sign these things, should there be some key things that you go over with the client and say, hey, I know you wouldn't say this out loud, but thinking that they're probably just going to skim to the bottom where the signature is and sign it. Should you spend a few extra minutes and say, I want to, go over this section or anything like that, or what do you recommend there?
Well, that's actually something that's been in my mind that I've been really wrestling with, how to put this out for my audience to be able to use. I am working on something so I can explain what each provision means for the photographer to understand, but also provide the photographer terms to explain, because I think it's really important that, okay, well, let me back up for a second. I think a lot of people, especially if you don't have the education of being an attorney or paralegal, you don't understand that one word or one phrase can trigger these contract legal theories. I'm not going to bore you guys, but it can trigger all these things that aren't necessarily written in there that are theories that are still binding within the contract. So you don't want to just copy and paste offline contracts that you find. You don't just want to copy from somebody else, but you also want to be able to explain it properly. And I think that's really important. The key, I try to hit the key points with my clients, because just like you, everyone goes to the end and signs. And I don't know how many times, you know, my husband and I will be out and we have to sign a contract, and he'll flip to the signature page and start signing, and I grab it to read it. But it's just, it's human nature. You just want to get through it. It's a lot of stuff. But I think as photographers, it's part of the education that we need to walk through. And I'm not saying sit there and make your client sit for 10 hours while you explain every provision, but the highlights and the big ones are when the money is due, you know, what I'm going to provide you, what I expect of you, and the copyright information.
So you answered my next question, was are there any key things you should have in there?
Yeah, those are key things I think you should definitely impress to the client. I mean, there's a lot of key things you should have, which I could be here all night.
Well, yeah, I don't want to give a list and then everybody think that's it. But as far as getting a contract, you know, do you have to go get a lawyer? Can you go on, you know, to your website to get something? I mean,
I have generally written templates created that can be used as is, or I have had multiple people buy them and take them to attorneys. And I get questions, well, what's the point in that? Well, the price of the contract and the fact that you're to bring in a written document to an attorney, whether you purchase it from me or one of the other legal websites that are available out there, as long as it's a reputable contract, you've reduced the lawyer's bill, because they bill by the hour, typically not by the project. So you've reduced your bill in the end, and it works out financially better for you. But if you want to completely start from scratch and you already know what provisions you want to put in there, find a local attorney that you trust and go for it. But I would look to see what their hourly rates for drafting are.
Okay. And someone asked out in the chat, maybe it was more of a statement than a question. Clients often misunderstand copyright versus print release.
Yeah, that's a big one that I actually try to ward off with my clients ahead of time to explain to them. When I provide them my pricing and I let them know the information that they'll be able to get a print release, I'll explain to them. So you're going to be able to print however you want. If you want to print a sweatshirt for Granny with your face on it, you're more than welcome to. I still own the pictures. I'm giving you a print release. You can print however you want for personal use, and we're both happy. And I've never had any of them ever they don't want ownership. They just want to be able to print. They don't really care about owning the photos.
Right. Okay, so that's a contract between you and the person you're shooting, you're taking a photograph of. What if, you know, as part of that, you, and this may not be a legal question, this may be more of a business question. You have a release that it says that you can you use these photos for your business, to promote your business, to put them on your Facebook page, on your blog, or wherever you want to put them on. You're reading the chat.
Yeah.
Chat's been pretty funny tonight. So you have the legal the right, because you've signed a contract with this person, but then they see it on your Facebook page or your wherever else, and for whatever reason now they go, wait a second, Rachel, I don't like to have my kid's picture there. You need to take them down. And they have a reaction that is kind of odd, because they've agreed to allow you to do this, and then once you do it, they react bad. But I'm sure that somebody's had that happen to them somewhere. What would be your advice?
That's a big question, one of the top 10 questions that I probably get in my inbox.
Oh, really?
And it's because there will be a privacy issue, or like, since I live in the Washington capital area, I work with a lot of clients, because I was here previously before we moved away. I work with a lot of clients that are federal agencies and they're not able to be published on the web and so forth. So they may sign the contract because they scroll to the bottom, they sign it, and they don't worry about it, but then they later realize, you know, either for privacy or they just don't want their kids' pictures, or their job binds them, whether it's politician or, you know, agent, whatever it is, that they can't be on there. I personally, for my business, while I have the complete legal right once they've signed it to use it, I have made the personal decision, and I don't advertise it. If it's requested, I will get rid of their model release, pull down their images, but in the interest of customer service and the word of mouth, I would rather make Mr. John Doe happy and get 4 or 5 of his friends coming to me and paying my bills, then that session's that's gonna have more value to me than that session being on my blog or just a couple images in my portfolio. I will say that a lot of people are like, well, they signed it, stick it to them. Well, you gotta weigh, is it worth it, you know? And it kind of depends on what the situation is. Are they just being ornery about it? Or is there a legit privacy reason? Sometimes there's custody issues, and when it comes to children and the different parents, and there could be all sorts of things that we don't necessarily know about. So I just try to do what I can to make them happy, but still inform them, you did sign this, so I still could use it. One of the things I try to counter with is, oh, you don't like it on the web, well, do you mind if we amend it and I can still use it for print? Because then I can still use those images in-person client sessions to book. I may not be able to use them on my portfolio on the web, but I can still print them out.
Yeah. So, you know, that's what I would have said, you know, is that this is not necessarily a legal issue because you probably have the legal right to do it. Although, do you really, you know, I have never been in court. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't make money from this show. I don't make money as a photographer. I make a living as, you know, I make a living in other ways, as an accountant for a large corporation and that kind of stuff. So, you know, other than from the business side, you know, you don't want to end up in court. Court is never a fun thing unless you're the lawyers. You don't want to end up in court. So I don't look at this as a legal issue. Like you just said, I look at it as a business issue. And why piss off the client? I mean, you just, if whatever unreasonable reason, even if it's totally unreasonable, they may have a reasonable reason, but even if it's unreasonable, just take it down and put up some other photo and move on. And hopefully you can repair that relationship. You don't want clients going away mad if you can help it.
Well, and just because and I always stand by this, just because I have the right to do something doesn't make it right. Correct. You know, and I'm not saying, you know, a lot of people will make the argument back at me, but this is how we make our living. We need to have fresh content. You're right, we do, and it's frustrating when I had an amazing boudoir session, and the client had already signed it, but then after the fact, she just said, you know, and it really wasn't a hard hitting. It just was, my husband feels uncomfortable with these images on the web. I hadn't posted them yet, and I said that's completely fine. It was one of the best boudoir sessions I've ever had. I can't put them on the web, but I can print them. Okay. And so just, you know, I still have the model release, so if I wanted to, I could, but I've honored it not. And, you know, and another alternative, and I know some photographers do this, and I haven't had I like having things in place that I can do that are customer service-wise, but some people will charge a fee that if you want to decline a model release, you can attach a fee to it. For me, when it's something ethical like that, for my business, I don't feel right charging someone because they want their privacy. Right.
So here's a question before I lose it. If I don't say it right, please correct me. But I think they're asking if in a case where you have parents who may be battling back and forth, maybe one parent books a session with you for the child, but who knows, maybe they don't have full custody of the child. It becomes some issue between, you know, who do you end up siding with, the person who booked with you and signed a contract, or who has custody of the child?
See, this is a perfect example showing that how one little factor can change everything. Yes. And it also triggers a whole bunch of legal theories because whoever signs the agreement, it's called privity of contract, not that you guys care, but whoever signs the agreement is the one that's responsible. But before you can sign the agreement, you have to have the legal right to sign the agreement. So in this situation, if we have a single parent with a child, only the parent that has the legal rights to the child can sign. If both parents, they're divorced or just not married, but they both have legal rights to the child, mom signs for child, dad has no rights within reason. Generally, he has no right, he has no responsibility to that contract. He does have a say in the child's privacy. See, this is it's so hard because it's not like a direct answer, because it starts going down these little privacy and contract paths. But so just bottom line, remember, whoever has legal rights can sign. Whoever signs is the one you're responsible to. And you, as long as you do your due diligence to ask the questions to make sure that they have the right to sign, and they're signing a legal document. So if the parent doesn't actually have the legal right and they sign it, that triggers a whole nother lawsuit. I mean, that triggers a whole nother legal issue. In general, as long as you've done you don't have any knowledge that there's any fishiness, you should be okay. I don't think I answered the question.
No, but I think the reason maybe you're searching for it is because the specific facts of this case, and correct me here, I'm not a lawyer, so correct me if I say this wrong. The specific facts of the case, each individual case can have such a dramatic difference on the outcome that if you're faced with that, what would you suggest they do? That contact a lawyer at that point, or try and work it out with both sets of parents, or what?
If I had a situation, and I'm going to answer Tamaya's question because it kind of goes on top of this. Yeah, no true legal advice. But if I was in this situation as a photographer and mom had signed and dad got all mad, I would defer it to them to have to resolve it. And their point of contact's in family court to do all that kind of stuff. And for me, if there was a big situation, I would probably terminate contract and say that I have no more responsibilities until it is worked out and I have something provided. I've never been in that situation, so I'm not really 100% sure.
That's interesting. That might be an approach, is just terminate the contract, say I'm done, you guys figure it out, and we can pick it back up when you figured it out.
This is so hard. Like it was asked in chat, so do you decline or ask permission from the non-custodial parent? Well, you technically only need one parental. You only need a parent that has rights. So both have rights. You technically only need one to sign for the child to do it. And only that child's on the hook. And like someone asked, if dad just has visitation, you need to get mom's signature. If dad has only visitation and no legal rights on behalf of the child, yes. It's just so hard to answer.
Well, let's move on from that one, because you're right. We can spend the rest of the show on that one question.
I know.
And something I thought about, and maybe this is not an issue because I never hear anybody talk about it, is we're all talking about a contract with the parents or the client, but often, especially if you're doing weddings or something like that, you might have a second shooter. Do you end up getting contracts, some kind of agreement between you and the second shooter?
Always. And the reason for this is because you need to define who is owning those photos, because laws do vary by state too. Because if you're a second shooter for a primary, in some states, since you are contracted for hire, it still may be copyright property of the primary. You may have situations where would still be ownership of. I shouldn't have said copyright, I should say ownership, because there's a whole bunch of other little things that go with it. But it could still be ownership of second shooter. You want to define who owns the photos, what the second shooter can do with the photos, if you're going to allow them to have it. Some primaries don't want their second shooters to post them at all. Some do. Some want them, they have to be watermarked or can't be posted until 6 months after a wedding. And then you also want to outline just all the other regular stuff of how much to pay, when they need to be there, whose equipment are they using. It's just like with your photography client. You need to outline all the expectations and all the requirements that you have between each other.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't. I guess maybe that's not an issue that often because I don't hear hardly anybody talk about that. But it's
I
something.
see it a lot.
Oh yeah, and I guess you probably would more than
I
me.
see it. I see it actually. That's why I keep saying it's like one of my top 10 questions. It really is. These are pretty commonplace questions. I was just answering this one today, and I asked, "Well, what's your second shooter contract say?" And they go, "What contract?" And so then we had to back up and go, "Well, what about your communications? What had you agreed to before?" And kind of work from there. But a contract would have made it clear cut. Would have said, "Yes, second shooter can post, photos on their page." No, they can't. Nice and clear cut. And for me, and yeah, of course, I'm a lawyer. I love to use contracts, but when I work with people, I tend to become friends with them. So I also want to try to keep that friendship at the same time. So having a contract kind of helps to keep the lines clear. We agree, we sign, and then if there's any issue, it's all right there. There's no guesswork.
Maybe I don't hear much about it because a lot of people aren't doing it, and that's the issue. So one question before I forget this was, let's say you have a session with a family, and it's not your first time shooting them. That you shot this family before. You need to get a contract every time you shoot with them, right?
Correct, unless unless it was, say you did like a birth to 1 year session and you did family pictures in there. It should be one session per contract unless you do a series and they're explicitly written in that one contract.
Okay. Yep. No, that
That
makes
makes
sense.
sense?
Yeah. Like if you have a two-session shoot or a multi-session shoot and it's all covered in the original contract. But if you do my senior shoot and then as a senior high school senior, and then 3 years later I get married or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I'm throwing two things together. It may not go together, but I get married later on. I want engagement photos. I need a
Mm-hmm.
separate contract. If it's
Well, and
not
when I say contract, I'm also including the model release as
right,
well.
yes, and I think that was a specific question, a model release.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
So, on a maybe not so much of a legal, but on a business question, at what point should I start worrying about getting both insurance and getting like a business license? Let's say right now, all I do is a family member asks me to go take, and I'm saying but this is not me, just a hypothetical person, goes out and takes family photos of my family. I go out and take my cousin, something like that, and then it starts to expand and I start doing some other stuff. And maybe at first it was for free, so I can get some portfolio photos, but then I start charging people, and it's kind of it's definitely not a full time thing, but it's starting to morph into making have more sessions where I'm making money from it. When should I worry about getting a business license and insurance?
When you are putting yourself out to the world that you are a business and you're accepting customers for pay, generally, is when you should do all the business things that are needed. Technically, if you're taking clients and taking money, you should be formed anyhow. If not for the fact that you might get in trouble because you're not remitting the right sales taxes or letting the government know, but to protect yourself, because you can do that through formation or insurance. I'm very big on doing that from the get-go as much as possible, and there's really no reason to, because, and I'm not going to go through all the different formation possibilities, but to form a business as a sole proprietor is really so simple. Some states it doesn't even require you to do anything, so there's really absolutely no reason. And if you're going to put yourself out as a professional and to take money, you should do the right thing to also get set up. Can I address one thing about
Sure.
the contracts, because people were asking about it?
Yeah.
Just to tack on, someone said, can you include the model release in the contract? You can, or you can separate them out. The way I always tell people is that your contract, you can have a model release, how should I say this? Your contract can be without a model release, like the situation we were talking about earlier where you may throw it out the window because of privacy reasons or their job. So, but you could still have a contract. So I would either have them separately or just do away with the model release and just have the contract. But you should never do a model release without a contract, because a model release is only giving the permission to use the photos. It's not outlining money, copyright, deadlines, or anything else. So I hope that
Yeah. Yeah. Hope that
Okay.
answers their question. It answered
Yeah, that
mine.
answered that. So I just saw that while I was saying that about the formation, but yeah, like Pam just said in the group, LLC paperwork's not very difficult. Most of it's not. It's just really getting your head around it and finding it on these government sites. And as soon as you're really taking money, and the question people always say to me, but so-and-so has a brother who's a lawyer who says, unless I'm making X amount, I don't need to report it. I'm of the mindset that I'm going to report everything, and I'm going to let the government tell me that I don't owe them anything. They have yet to do that, but I don't want to go on party talk that I got from so-and-so's brother and then end up getting a fine, 6 months down the road because that brother's not paying that fine. You are.
Yeah, yeah. The sad thing is that a lot of times the way people get caught is tax issues. You look at
Yeah, pretty much.
some of the most famous people in history. Al Capone got caught. They didn't get caught on all of his other things he did, but he got caught on tax evasion. And the tax
Yeah.
guys, they don't have the same burden of proof as a normal court, so that's
No.
why it's easier for them to win. So they're not somebody to play around with.
Well, that's another reason because pretty much everyone has to remit taxes.
Yep.
Whereas, like I said a little bit ago, you can set up in a state without really even, in some states, without filing anything, just by putting yourself out there, that you create yourself as a sole proprietor without filing anything. There's a few states like that. Most require the doing business as license, but so it's relatively, the government doesn't really regulate that. That's like a $10, $20 fee. They're going to go for the thousands of dollars that they can fine you for not paying your taxes.
And BC, and I wonder if BC is Brian, the name I couldn't pronounce earlier.
No, I think it's Barbara.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
It's
I was hoping he was out there because I want to tell him that I went over his photo earlier. But they're asking, is LLC for state or for federal?
LLCs are state, and I know where she's going with this. She was asking, I think her next question would be about business names. But LLCs are state-specific through the Secretary of State, and it only reserves your business name for that state. So if you if you set up in North Carolina, Rachel Brenke Photography, well, there could be another Rachel Brenke, which there are none out there, hopefully, no others. But another Rachel Brenke could set up in photography, could set up in California. Well, if we only do state-specific filings such as an LLC, then we're completely fine. Yeah, it will suck for website and SEO and all that, but we're not really treading on each other. The issue is when if one of us trademarks, that's federal for America in case there's any Canadian or foreign listeners, but federally trademarking, if I federally trademarked Rachel Brenke Photography, no one else in America could use it.
And we should mention that, while we may have some foreign listeners, and I'm sure on the recorded version we do, because I had somebody from Northern Ireland contact us, and maybe this is service members, but we have 3 listeners in Afghanistan too. So we're talking about American law, which may not apply where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. So like you, who moved around a lot, if you moved to a state that there already was a Rachel Brenke Photography, bam, what? How hard is it to get the trademark, like you mentioned? You said trademark or copyright?
The trademark process is, it can be expensive and it's very time consuming. I'm going through it right now for a couple things. And it's, even for me, it made me want to cry. And I've gone through and done this in practice before. And so it's very overwhelming. It's something I would definitely talk to an attorney about getting done to make sure you do it correctly, because there's a lot of nuances and it has to do with stream of commerce and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so if I moved into a state and there was another Rachel Brenke, I would have to, if she trademarked, or if I moved in that state and she has it, I have to change name. But if I wanted to, I could trademark.
Now, kind of sticking with the same thing, often photographers travel for their, maybe you're a wedding photographer, or maybe you live close to the border and you're crossing state lines, or maybe you live in Atlanta and you're flying to Chicago to do a wedding. So you're working in multiple states. You're based in one state, but you're working in multiple states. Do I need to now get a business license in all those different states?
Oh, I hate this question. It depends. Because
is that one in the top 10?
Yeah.
You ever see Duck Dynasty? where
Yes.
Cy Robertson says the number one thing when you go camping is, and then he has like 5 number one things.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
We have family that's actually from their town. So it's funny when we see their, I don't watch it, my family does, but when they watch it, they're my mom and them are all like, oh, I know where that is. I'm like, okay, that's weird. Anyways, okay, off track about the pregnancy. It really depends. I always advise people just to call up the taxing agency first. You can call the business, but they'll probably send you over to taxing to see if you can do like an interim business license, but you're more than likely going to have to remit the sales tax. It depends, though. It depends on the state, and it depends on when you get the money and that kind of thing. So it's not a clear-cut answer. Sorry, guys.
So, but I don't need to get a business license in each one of those states?
It depends. It depends on what their requirements are.
Okay. Okay, but it's something that I would need to look into if I'm going to do it. I'm going to be doing that.
Yeah, I just tell them just to call them up. I know that a lot of photographers that I've spoken to that travel a lot don't do it. For me, ethically, I mean, I'm bound at a higher level on certain things, and just I feel like I need to. So I just advise everyone to call them.
Okay. So we're actually getting close to the hour here, so I'm going to take a few more of my questions and see if I missed any in chat. But one of them, I think they posted on your page, Becky Riley.
Okay.
I don't know if she's out there in chat, but Becky Riley, and we still got to do the drawing too.
Oh yes.
So don't leave, guys, because we still got to do the drawing. Becky's question on your Facebook page was, how far in advance should you announce relocation? I'm about to do it again and not sure when to make it website public or start blogging towards the new location.
This is a project that I've been working on because I have moved my business every year for the last 4 years, and I have so much to share. So my very quick answer for that would be, as soon as you set in stone, no. The reason I say set in stone is the military situations, they'll tell you and then they may change it, and you don't want to waste time marketing. But as soon as you know, at least 6 months out, and there's a timeline, because in that time I want to start changing my SEO on everything. I want to start letting my audience know, let my clients know, reach out to my past clients and let them, ask them if they know anybody, because Facebook makes the world go round and very small. But as soon as you know, like for me, we didn't know where we were going to be this year. We kind of just moved and hoped we were going to end up somewhere, and then when I was official, we were already here, so I didn't really have any lead time. But as soon as you know.
Okay. This is just a comment. I was looking through a lot of your stuff, and I love your way of tracking your mileage on a photo shoot. You know, how you reset the tripometer, you take a photo of it when you get back home, and there's your evidence of the trip.
In
right?
theory.
In theory.
I try to remember.
Well, I think you obviously are a master of time management, at least compared to me. You're a master of time management. I have 4 monitors here, and you would think that would make me super productive, but what it does is to make me super distracted.
Yeah.
And you have found a way to become super focused. And I think I read somewhere or saw a video somewhere where you're talking about thinking about it like your diet, where you're counting calories or something like that. Is think about your time. If you're stretched for time, if you're battling the family versus work, if you're a husband or a wife and your spouse is thinking you're spending too little time with them, I'm sure anybody, male or female, probably more female, are pressured by their spouses that they're not spending enough time with them. That you've got to start then getting a little more strict with your time and watching your time, right?
Yeah, it's funny. My husband had just walked past, like right when you're asking this question. No, because it's a very real thing, and I think that for me at least, my business goes up and down. I mean, everyone's has a busy season, they have a slower season, and so as long as it's not all busy all the time and I don't have time for family, or I don't try to make the time, I think they're a little bit more understanding. And it's really hard for me, and you probably know this. This is my 5th show with you, that I'm very controlled about a lot of the things that I do. And so it used to be I couldn't go to bed until I answered every email. I couldn't let an email go past 24 hours. to be answered. I've slipped up to 48 hours now, and I still pick up my phone before I get out of bed and try to do some emails because the kids are normally still asleep. But it's as long as it's easy to let it start infringing on your family, and you'll start seeing the negative effects. And just like I was telling somebody today, I was applauding them for taking time off. This is not it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. If my dad's listening, he's probably giving a fist pump because he said that to me my whole life. And I've always been the type to try to quickly do things. But what is the point in being a business owner and doing this if you're not able to put yourself and family first? There's no point in it. Then I might as well be working a 9 to 5 or at the mercy of somebody else.
Yeah, and did I see somewhere where you had said you're the boss? If it's your business, you're the boss, and you can set the schedule. You know, if you want to do 10 shoots a month or 2 shoots a month, you know, you decide. That's
my boss is very mean.
Your boss is you. Is very mean. Yeah, so you can dictate your pace. You know, depends on what you want to get out of it and how much you want to put into it.
And it's hard because you can get very motivated and want to achieve a lot of things. I mean, like I was explaining to you with the WPPI Creative Live in the book, I was doing all of that on top of my regular legal contracts because I work with some law firms and stuff. So I was doing that on top of not only my photography consulting, my photography shooting, and all of that. I had my regular jobs and all that on top of, and that was a very hard few months. And luckily I have a very understanding family that knew that I was on a timeline and needed to get it accomplished. But I also told myself if it was any longer, I started turning things away, and I had to start letting some things go, and I wasn't going to take on anything else. You kind of just have to hit a point and admit that it's not a weakness if you can't do it all, which is very, very hard for me. But I don't know. I think I've done okay this summer, trying to back off a little bit.
You know, I think you do tremendous. So you know, don't beat yourself up. Every time this is Rachel's fifth time on the show, and every time you come on the show, I feel a little. Where did I say? I actually wrote this down so I could remember it. A little more pathetic.
No.
Because it's you know, Rachel's one of the few guests that, you know, most guests I say don't worry about chat. I'll watch chat for you. It'll get distracting if you try and watch chat and talk with us. And I'm always worried that, you know, once I ask you a question and you start and I start watching chat and I'm doing production, that I would come back and ask you a question that you just answered and look like an idiot. You're the one guest that can not only talk with me, be talking about your question, watching chat, and actually from occasion type into chat all at the same time, and that's just amazing.
Well, and that's the skills I get from having a bazillion children. gotta have eyes everywhere.
And you would think after 5 times on the show I'd have all my questions answered, but I still have a number of them here. But instead of going through mine, I want to make sure I didn't miss any out there. So guys, the chat's rolling by fast. If I miss one of your questions, go ahead and put them out there in chat, and I'll try and get them in. While we're waiting, and before I forget, I wanted to thank Jeannie Kessler for, let's see if I can get that. Can't see it it's not very bright. But Jeannie sent me this in the mail. It's a little writing she did. You're not going to be able to read it, but I put it up on Facebook. I think it's something she may own the copyright or trademark to. I'm an accountant, not a lawyer. But she made this saying, and she sent me one, and she actually sent me 2. Could be just holding up the same one, but sent me 2. One for my mom. So thank you, Jeannie, for sending those. Jeannie is a member of our Facebook group, and thank you very much.
Somebody said there was a non-payment of wedding contract. I missed that question. I saw the tail end of the conversation. Can someone let me know? You guys are driving me crazy.
Do you have Hush Your Face trademark? Is that one of your favorite sayings?
Yeah.
Hush your face.
So what? I don't want to scroll and mess up the screen. Does someone have? If the payment arrangements aren't being paid, what do? If they're outlined in the contract, 3 weeks to wedding, I send a gentle reminder and tell them, you know, citing to the contract, payment is due by X and X date. If there was a late fee that we assessed, you know, tell them that the late fee is going to happen. And I would say to them, if my payment is not here by X, I do not have to fulfill the contract. I would say it a little bit more eloquently, but I would just say that I'm released from my duties of the contract as you have breached the terms of the agreement if you don't pay. And I would probably not send them legalese off the bat. People think that I like spout off legal terms all day, but when I talk to my clients, I try to just talk to them in layman's, not layman, but very straight to the point and customer service oriented. Just say, hey, just in case, I know things get busy as wedding season is coming up, or your wedding is coming up, just let you know there's still a payment left, because we all get busy. They may just really have forgotten. If they're not answering, then that's when I would get into the legalese.
They're asking about the giveaway, so don't think we're not ending yet. Don't start leaving yet.
Yes, not yet.
Rachel's still answering a few questions. Plus, we have $150 of legal forms. It's the little thing right below here. If y'all can see me, right below there, where $150 of legal forms from Rachel's site that we're going to give away. We're going to pick somebody from chat to give that away to. So don't leave yet. I love coming along and hearing. Yeah, Rachel's been on 5 times.
Chat is going so quick.
It is.
If they're not answering phones or emails, I probably would go about doing a certified letter. If you already have the written email contract communication. Again, this is not legal advice. This is just what I would do, even if I wasn't a lawyer. But I would also send them a certified letter with a copy of the contract, one that they have to, sign for, letting them know that I will not be arriving if I don't to fulfill my end if they have not paid by X and X date. And then just kind of wait and see. I don't know.
And
so hard.
We did cover copyright versus print release, right?
Yes, we did.
Okay. So I don't know, PM, how you say your name, but we covered that, and basically, if I'm saying this right, print release allows you to print it as much as you want, but you don't own the photo. The photographer who holds the copyright still owns the photo. Is that right, Rachel?
Yes.
Basically.
Yes, photographer still has ownership rights.
Hey, 2 people came back.
Clients get the clients have the permission to print.
All right, so why don't we'll continue some. Now let's take a break here, and you pick a number between 1 and 50, 1 and 49 now. 1 and 49. Of course, I can't win, and you can't win. But other than that, anybody else out in chat can win. So you pick a number, and if Jim Collison's out there, Jim, you can't win either. I don't know if he's still out there.
TP Chap, email me, and we'll talk about the custody question, just because I think there might be more to it. But anyways, okay, so the number 37.
Okay, so it's going to take me a second, so you can keep talking with chat while I count this.
Oh, well, then I can answer it then if we have some time. So what was the question? I can't scroll up, but the question was, I believe, what if the non-custodial parent signs and they really didn't have the right? That really is they essentially didn't have the requisite right to sign the agreement. It really could be void between you guys. There would end up being multiple causes of action. One would be between the custodial parent and the non-custodial, and then you also could take them to claims. But I would wait and just make sure that it's established that they don't have rights first. Did that answer it?
Yep.
Right, okay.
Yeah, guess who number 37 is? Rachel Brenke.
Me!
So, Rachel can't see the names here. She's not looking at the names, so maybe pick another number.
This is rigged. Anybody but Crystal. 22.
Okay, keep talking because I'm going to count these again.
Okay, so any other questions that I may not have answered? No? Okay. I don't know what to say. I'm excited for the end of the year.
Okay, number 22, and you're gonna have to tell us your name. If you gotta say you're here. If you just logged in and maybe you've left, we're gonna have to pick another number. But the name in here is K80C. K80C.
Are you there?
There's a slight delay between when we say something and they hear it, so maybe just maybe 5 seconds. Oh, If they just said something, that's me. Okay, KADC.
Mhm.
Do you mind sharing your real name? If you don't want to share your real name in chat, that's fine. You can send me an email to podcast@jpeg2RAW.com. Actually, send me an email regardless to that. But if you want to say your real name, Katie Cartwright. Okay. Thank you, Katie. Katie wins, as you can see below, right below the hangout here, the live stream here, is $150 worth of legal forms from thelawtog.com, Rachel's site. So congratulations, Katie. Katie, please send me an email so I can get that worked out. And again, the email address is podcast@jpeg2raw.com. And then we'll get that going. And if you ever have any questions or suggestions on guests, we're always looking for guests. Send me an email at that same place. If you want to join the jpeg2RAW Facebook group, we're welcome. We'd love to have you over there. The show will be, if you didn't get to see the whole show, or if you want to listen to it again, because Rachel gave out a lot of good advice. If you get that mouse off your face, I had the cursor on your face. This is recorded and it'll be available on iTunes, on Stitcher Radio, which is audio only, but on iTunes, both in video and audio format, on YouTube, and a lot of other things, including even TiVo. I actually get the show on TiVo. And then, of course, if you have an iPhone or an Android phone, you can get it on, various apps can get it. So it'll be out in a few days. We still could see you, Rachel.
Oh, I know. I'm looking at their thing. I was going to follow up and say with that, since there's so much that goes into the child custody thing, I might see if I can write a blog post about it, because I don't want to have put out confusing misinformation, because again, it could be one factor that changes everything. So I'll see if I can get that done in the next couple of weeks for you guys. Okay,
and if you do that, send me a note or do something, and I'll put it on a Facebook page too, to do a share on the Facebook page, so that, as a follow up to the show. And I'm sure we'll have Rachel on somewhere in the future. You do have a birth coming up here in the next. How long did you say you are?
60 days.
Next 60 days or so. So I'm sure you'll need a little bit of a break there. But I'm sure we'll have Rachel on again. 5 times is not enough. And let me see if there's any other things. Oh, if you're not a member of our Facebook group, or if you are a member, the August contest ends in just a few days, or 4 days. The contest, the challenge, I should say, for this month is fire. Next month, I already know what next month is, but we're not going to reveal it just yet. And that's about it. Oh, next week we have Mark Johnson coming on. Mark Johnson, there's a number of things that we can go over with him, but I think next week we're going over. You ever see those photos where, and this can be a little eerie or it can be really, really neat. Well, let's say we got a still picture of Rachel, and all of a sudden her eye blinks. You thought it was a still photo, a normal photo, and then the eye blinks in the photo. You ever seen something like that? Or like the flame was moving a little bit? Oh, this guy is a master in Photoshop, and he's going to walk us through how to do some of those things. And then later he's also a master of composite images, and like the crazy ones that you would see done in Hollywood. He does those kinds. We have him coming out next week. So he's not going to go over that kind of composite stuff next week. We're going to have him on another show to do that. So he is going to be fabulous to come on. And that is it for this week. Unless, Rachel, you had any closing statements?
Nothing. Just again, if you guys need any clarification, feel free to email me on anything. I try to answer as much as possible, but it can get really hairy, especially in family law. And that's why I'm not a family attorney, because that kind of stuff is all crazy. So, all right.
We will eventually be back on YouTube. My band is now over. It ended about halfway through the show. But before I do that again, I want to make sure I have all that rock solid. So, but we'll eventually be back on YouTube. It won't be much different for you guys, because I didn't really see many ads pop up during the show. So no. I don't think, for whatever reason, that's not much of an issue. But be sure to make it out next week. We're generally the same time every week, 8:30 Eastern, right here on jpeg2raw.com/live. Stick around for the post show. We'll do a little bit of a post show, and then we'll end it. But for the regular show, Can everybody, thank you for coming out, chat, and until next week, keep it raw.